Have you ever heard about blended learning? Well, I guess you already have. Since 2020, the Department of Education provided a learning continuity plan to continue education in the Philippines. And one of these is what we call the blended learning. But did you know that even before the pandemic and this new normal setting, blended learning has been adopted across higher education, with some scholars referring to it as the new traditional model or the new normal course delivery to some countries. Now, what is blended learning? When you think about the traditional classroom environment on one end of the spectrum, and on the other end of the spectrum is a student learning on a computer at home, blended learning is somewhere in the middle. According to Graham of 2013, blended learning is the integration of face-to-face and online instruction. Basically, it is the combination of modular and traditional classes. When we talk about modular, these are the e-books and modules that we use. And the traditional class, on the other hand, is the face-to-face setting. But according to DepEd, in this new normal setting, it must have a limited number of students in the classroom. Now let's talk about these two things, the modular and the traditional. Starting with the modular. Modular could be online or offline. In offline, students are provided with printed materials such as books and modules. Students are also provided with activity sheets, or the so-called self-learning kit, or it is famously known as worksheets. Basically, these are the activities that students bring at home to answer. Aside from the printed materials, blended learning also comes with non-printed materials. This is what we call the electronic book or the e-book, and the learning management system or the LMS. There are e-books in the form of PDF files where we can read offline after downloading it. And there are also what we call the interactive e-books. E-books are in digital form where we can view it using our tablet, mobile phones, laptops, or the computer. And again, e-books could be online or offline. And aside from e-books, we also have the learning management system. This LMS is usually online. This is where the teacher uploads his or her lessons, quizzes, and other activities where students answer them online. So like for our case, we are using Google Classroom as our LMS. Other examples of LMS are Google Classroom, Edmodo, Moodle, Schoology, and Microsoft Teams. Aside from LMS, there is also what we call the educational video conference, where students and the teacher will have a video conference or video call, and these are some of the tools used for video conferences. Facebook Messenger, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Google Meet, and Skype in the classroom. Now, how about the traditional class? What is this? This is known for the face-to-face class, wherein there's the teacher and the learners in the classroom. In this time of pandemic, the number of students for face-to-face is very limited, and students are not required to go to school every day. And if students attend to class, there should only be 15 to 20 students per classroom. The amount of blend from the module and traditional classes can vary from session to session. Today, let's talk about the 4 blended learning models. Let's go back to the spectrum of the learning environments. As we see it now, there are 4 models emerging: lab rotation, class rotation, flex, and pod. Let's go over to each of this now. Lab rotation is where students move in and out of a classroom to a computer lab. Many people seeing this model will think it's very similar to a traditional computer lab. However, if you look under the hood, the difference is that in a lab rotation, the data from the content in the learning lab informs the instruction in the classroom. In a class rotation model, students are broken out into smaller groups. So, example, a class of 30 may be broken out into 4 small groups. And in every 20 minutes, the groups may rotate between stations. One station is with a teacher, 2 stations are with a computer, and the 4th station may be guided practice. So in this environment, a teacher has the ability to monitor the whole class, manage behavior, and maintain the class culture. Next one is the flux model. In the flux model, the learning lab might look like a large call center with banks of computers. Around the edges of the lab might be smaller breakout rooms for classes. In this model, the students work mostly on the computers and the teacher might pull out a group of students for seminar, intervention, or direct instruction. One of the newer models is the pod concept. Essentially, it's a school within a school, and each pod might have multiple grade levels. In this model, the role of the teacher may be redefined and broken out into discrete roles. It could be an advisor, a behavior specialist, or an instructor to support each pod. All of these models are rethinking the traditional school, giving students more control over their learning and providing students with targeted instruction. Now, what are some of the results? From a student perspective, students are more engaged using online content versus paper and pencil practice worksheets. They like getting real-time feedback and knowing where they stand at any time. Students can control how fast or slow they need to go through a lesson. Also, even though the class sizes may be larger, students feel that their classes are actually pretty small because the experience they have with the teacher is in a small group. Now, from a teacher's perspective, teachers find it easier to plan for small group instruction versus trying to teach to the middle and differentiating top and bottom, and teachers find teaching in small groups more rewarding because the students are more engaged. And finally, teachers are surprised by how much easier classroom management is with students fully engaged on the computer versus when students are doing things on pencil and paper. There are so many potential opportunities blended learning brings, and I hope you find it useful as you think about your own school. Blended learning is a mix of old and new, as much as it is a mix of physical and digital learning. It's not just about technology for fun, but it's about making connections between the classroom and the virtual world. Of course, it's fun too. Thank you so much for listening. I am Maridel Armugot.